It's our newest one. There's one 15 open, and that's for you. The full bottle is for you. I'm sorry, I only brought one full.
That's okay. We know how to split.
There's two 15s.
Yeah, one is open and one isn't.
Right.
So grab the one.
Save that one so we can put it on the black market later.
Yeah,
the 13.
You can sell that.
That's the 13.
You can sell that. You can sell that on the.
This episode of Bourbon Pursuit is made possible through listeners like you, supported through Patreon, and with partnerships brought to you by the following. Life insurance used to be a pain. Now with Ethos, the application only takes 10 minutes online. Go check it out. Pursuit.getethos.com. That's pursuit.getethos.com.
Fred Minnick here with an important announcement. Join me September 21st at the Art of Bourbon, a rare bourbon auction benefiting Louisville Speed Art Museum. I'm the curator, and get this, I've tracked down the 10th bottle of Pappy. Learn more at speedmuseum.org. That's speedmuseum.org.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bourbon Pursuit, the official podcast of bourbon. And do you have an interesting way that you listen to our podcast? We're always looking for hearing stories about how you watch or listen to the podcast. And who knows, maybe you can get your name mentioned on here as well, because this is coming from Paul Clark, a listener based out of Colorado. And he said on Friday night, he's usually there with his wife making some whiskey sours, and then she pours a blind set. And then they cue up the podcast and listen to it. So, Paul, thanks for sending in that. And if you have an interesting way that you listen to Bourbon Pursuit, send us an email, team@bourbonpursuit.com. So we want to know how you kick back and listen, and who knows, maybe we'll give you a shout out here on the podcast. Congratulations to Cody Harms and Ryan Hartnett, who have won tickets to Bourbon and Beyond through our Patreon supporter campaign. There's still 1 week left to get entered for the general public if you follow us on Facebook. So go there now, because this is going to be your last podcast reminder. We have another pair of GA tickets, as well as the Mint VIP Weekend Experience. That is a pair of tickets valued at $1,000, and we're going to have one lucky winner for that one. So good luck to all that get entered, and you're going to know relatively soon by next podcast who's going to win that one. Unfortunately, I was out of town this week, and I didn't get to go to the media preview, but the Kentucky Bourbon Trail Welcome Center that we've talked about on the show before is finally open at the Fraser Museum. It's located on the first floor, and it's founded in partnership with the KDA. This Welcome Center is going to be the official start of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. It's free of charge, so make sure you go and you write that down for your next Bourbon Trail visit. Now for today's show, have you ever wondered why there's an extra L in Barrell Bourbon? Well, today you're going to find out. Joe, Beatrice, and Tripp Stimson joined the show to talk about all things Barrell and how this brand is really one of those for the bourbon geeks because it comes unfiltered and barrel proof. But then we also dive into their newest releases of the Infinite Barrel Project, and we talk about their plans for sourcing, distilling, blending, and more as they have made Louisville, Kentucky their headquarters. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your favorite podcasts, whether that's in Stitcher or Google Play, or like us on YouTube and Facebook to get the video podcast there. And if show notes are really hard to read on your device, well, make sure you go to bourbonpursuit.com, sign up for the email list, and then you can get the pretty pictures and the links all to your inbox every single time a new episode's released. And lastly, we talk about all the time and even give away free tickets to Bourbon and Beyond. Patreon is where we have all the things for supporting the show. Limited edition t-shirts, bottle tote bags, patches, stickers, you name it, including access to barrel picks. So go to patreon.com, patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit, and help support the show and be a part of the Patreon community. With that, enjoy this week's episode, and here's Fred Minnick with Above the Char.
I'm Fred Minnick, and this is Above the Char. In the 1940s, a major Kentucky distillery considered a woman for its master distiller role. Up until this point, the bourbon industry had always had women in its ranks, especially on the bottling lines, but this highly coveted role of master distiller had always been reserved for men. When I interviewed the woman for my book, Whiskey Women, the 90-year-old still vividly remembered the opportunity. She was a chemist, highly respected, and knew her way around the still. According to her, distilling was easy, but her peers were men, and they frequently harassed her and made her feel unsafe. The executives told the woman she was the most qualified person for the job, that she would be a great master distiller. Not good, but great master distiller. They couldn't give her the job because, in their words, she was a woman. Their rationale was men or her coworkers would look up her dress as she walked up the stairs. As she told me this, I could hear a crack in her voice, still clearly shaken 7 decades later. She asked me to keep her identity a secret. I have stayed true to this vow. She left the distilling business after this incident and had a brilliant career in another industry, where she was respected and admired for being the first female to do many things. Clearly, this was bourbon's loss. She may have pioneered small batching, created the single barrel, or discovered the new distilling techniques that made bourbon better. And I am personally saddened bourbon lost such a great talent to sexist assholes. Fortunately, today, bourbon has many accomplished women, from Michter's Andrea Wilson and Pamela Heilman to Castle and Key's Mary Ann Eves and George Dickel's Nicole Austin. And they've earned every ounce of their recognition. I'm glad we live in a world that now where many women get a fair shot when competing for a master distiller role. Of course, sexist assholes still exist and remain persistent that the 1940s be the way we live. But for the most part, whiskey executives and drinkers judge distillers for their whiskey and not how they look. That's how it always should have been. And that's this week's Above the Char. If you're interested in learning more about the history of women in whiskey, check out my book, Whiskey Women, wherever books are sold. If you have an idea for Above the Char, hit me up on Twitter at Fred Minnick. That's at Fred Minnick, Minnick. Until next week, cheers.
Welcome back to the episode of the Bourbon Pursuit Podcast, the official podcast of bourbon. Kenny and Ryan here at our
official recording studio.
Yes, it is,
which has made itself a home.
My dining room, right?
Yeah.
But we kind of turned it. We got a bunch more bottles on here than we usually do.
Yeah, this is like crazy. I mean, normally guests don't bring shit. We have to offer them. So I'm already liking these guys. So
yeah, we haven't gone to the basement yet to go diving around.
They're
there.
like, "How drunk do you want to get today?" I was like, "Well, I can clear my calendar.
we can make time for something like that."
Yeah.
No, this is something that people have been asking around for a while, right? Because this is a name that has started making its way to national markets. You see it on the shelves. There's a few people that go crazy. It was a winner of the San Francisco Spirits Awards last year, and so I think it's going to be a great discussion too.
Yeah, it's the bourbon that started the whole marzipan thing for me. Like Fred Minnick, I think it was batch 11 said he got marzipan out of it, and I was like, "What the hell is marzipan?" I don't know. And now people are sending us marzipan. In
the shape of a bourbon bottle.
Exactly.
We're just trying to educate.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about today because I know a little bit about the brand, but not a ton. So I'm excited to kind of find out about it.
No, I think so too, because it is exciting in regards of how this company came to be and how they took a different, I guess you could say, twist on things, where it was originally just all started as sourcing and blending, right? It wasn't saying like, we're going to go and create the next craft distillery, right? It said like, we're going to make a name for ourselves. And so I think we're going to get a lot of those good stories that are going to happen today. So let's go ahead and introduce our guests. So today we have Joe Beatrice, the founder of Barrell Bourbon, as well as Tripp Stimson, the master distiller and director of distillery operations. So fellas, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
So, let's go ahead and, we'll go back and forth on this because I kind of want to just get a good background from each of you. So just kind of give me an idea of your first either memory of bourbon or how you got into it. What sort of led you there? Was it, grandpa handing you something underneath the table? Like what was that moment that sort of got you into bourbon or at least became something in the back of your head? Joe, we'll start off with you.
Okay, well, I would say that it was probably broken into 3 different phases. One, when I was a little kid, and there was a ceramic bottle of bourbon that I opened up and smelled. So that was the first experience. I don't know how old I was, but I was young. That was the first one. The second one, probably most memorable, was my, like most people, 21st birthday. And it was a moment when I didn't drink bourbon for 10 years after that. So then I had a little bit of a hiatus. And then the other real memorable moment for me was the first time I drank whiskey out of a barrel, which and I remember thinking in that moment, why isn't everybody drinking it like this? And that was Scotch. And it was one of those moments that just sort of stayed with me, and then it sort of informed everything else that came after that.
Right. And we're going to hit on that probably a little bit deeper. So, Tripp, what about you?
What, we do therapy later?
Yeah, exactly. We'll return to your childhood.
Well, I'm actually from Tennessee originally. So being from Tennessee, of course, you drink Jack Daniels. So that was more my drink of choice early on in this. And then getting the opportunity to go work for the parent company to Jack Daniels was really cool. And it's actually a kind of an interesting story how that happened. I was sitting on a beach, Daytona Beach, actually, in the bed of my pickup truck, drinking a Corona, listening to country music with my sister.
Sounds like spring break.
You weren't at Sharky's.
Well, I just graduated college.
You weren't at Sharky's, were you?
So we were sitting right behind the condo on the beach, listening to country music, and the phone rings, and I didn't recognize the number. And I answered the phone, and it was Brown-Forman HR calling to do a phone interview. And so I did my original phone interview for Brown-Forman on the beach drinking Corona.
That's awesome.
And then
it got you here.
And then a week later, they offered me the job, and the rest is history.
You must have had that like happy buzz medium. Like when you play golf, you 1 to 3 beers is like
Right.
my ideal.
Beer hole.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So let's, Joe, this is where we're going to let you kind of go off and talk a little bit here. So I want to talk about, the history of Barrell and really why did you want to start it? You had hinted at drinking something barrel proof and saying, why isn't everybody doing this? But kind of go a little bit deeper with that.
Okay. Well, as we talked about before, I had a different career, and along the way, I spent a lot of time in the spirits industry, the spirits vertical, and I made beer my whole life.
Before you get too far, so kind of talk a little bit about that because I don't know if everybody remembers that. So kind of, I know it was a history of advertising. So kind of give us a recap.
So I started an ad agency, and then quickly found the internet and created a company that did web application development, websites, online advertising, marketing, and we spent a lot of time building brands for various clients. And among those brands were several spirits companies. We worked in Kentucky with
Brown-Forman.
No, we worked on a number of brands in Kentucky, and then we worked on a lot of tequila, and then there was a lot of different very high profile brands that we had worked with. The company here was Glenmore Distilleries, which was acquired by UDB, I believe. Yeah, and so along the way, I made beer, and I loved making beer, and I realized that at some point I had a pretty decent palate. And so the true story is, several years later, my wife and I were at a distillery in New York, and I had this moment where I was tired of writing PowerPoint presentations. I was trying to do what I was doing, and we talked it over, and we came up with the concept of doing a distillery. That lasted about a week.
Like most dreams.
Until you start realizing what it really takes to do that. And so I still wanted to do the distillery, but I figured the best way to do that was to establish the brand first. So there were things that I knew that I didn't know and had to learn. Spent a year getting everything lined up, rekindling old relationships with different people. And along the way, came up with the concept for Barrell Bourbon, which was to be differentiated by being cask strength every release. I wanted every single release to be different, intentionally and unique, and of limited release. So there was only so much of it available. And I did that because I have an understanding of how consumers look at products and what they think and how they view things and how everybody's looking for the next new thing. I did not want to replicate it. And I knew the difficulty of replicating the same product. Early in my career, I met Jim Cook and we Boston Beer, Sam Adams, and we did a little work for them, and that's where I got interested in making beer. And one of the things he said to me was, "You'll never be able to produce this recipe over and over again." So that's a challenge.
Yeah, it's like I ruined. You think at that point maybe like the brand is destined to fail at that point, maybe something like that, or what was your kind of idea?
Well, yeah. So I spent a long time trying to make the same beer over and over again, and I couldn't, and it was sort of interesting. I was very careful about it, but I didn't. So anyway, fast forward to this concept. So I knew that we were going to source a product. I knew that I wanted to create something different in every batch. I wanted to have the packaging the same, and I wanted to really focus on what's in the bottle and the packaging. So this whole brand is about what you're drinking. It's the only important thing is not any kind of backstory. It's not anything made up. And we're very clear that we're a merchant whiskey company, and so that is the focus, and that is what we're going to continue to do. We are in the process of building the distillery. The permitting takes a little longer than
we'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there.
So there's obviously tons of startups who source whiskey, and it's interesting. Like you decide to do the cask strength, one batch, per, and not replicate it. Why did you do that? Did you say like there's not this in the market, or is that what you like personally? It's
sort of both of that. This did not exist in the marketplace, and part of the reason is. People are always looking for the next new thing to drink or eat or experience, and you don't go to a store and say, "Do you have the same thing that I was drinking in the last 100 years?" Because I would really like to have another bottle of that. Well, a lot of people do that, but a lot of people go in and say, "What's new?
Yeah,
what do you have that's new?" And so what we wanted to do was to create a product that when people went to the store and they said, "What's new?" the person working there or behind a bar would say, "Have you had the new Barrell Bourbon release or Barrell Whiskey or Barrell Rum, whatever?" And that's what our focus has been. And people have responded to it, and we're going to stay with that.
What is it about barrel proof that you think that you like and that consumers will get out of, I guess, versus having a 90 or a bottle and bond type product?
Mm-hmm. It was simply a matter of the flavor. We love the flavor of barrel proof spirits. You can have a lot. You can do what you want with them at that point. You can dilute them. You can add ice. You can add water. You can put them in a cocktail. The flavor comes through in a cocktail if you want to drink it that way. But the concentration, the essence of the flavor to me was everything. It's just there. You can taste it. You can taste the barrel.
Yeah. Like 5 years ago, I didn't even know there was barrel proof stuff. I was like, what? This is straight from the barrel. But yeah, no, it's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
And so when I think about that same concept, do you think that, when you were trying to start this and, you said you came from a spirits background, but not necessarily a distillation background, mm-hmm. You're kind of a home brewer mm-hmm. kind of background, right? So when you started getting into this, did you at one point think that maybe I'm a little too over my head, like I'm getting into the whiskey market, I'm trying to source barrels, do a blend, try to hit a target market that who knows what they're going to react to? Like, talk about what that felt like.
Well, I think one of the things that's important in life is to know what your limits are and get as far to that limit as you possibly can. I knew that I didn't have the skill set that Tripp has. I knew I had to find that skill set, and I did. Tripp and I met. We met. And we were blending. I think it was batch 2, and we worked together ever since. And along the way, I've learned more than you could possibly imagine about distillation science from Tripp, and it's been an amazing experience. So and the other thing that was very clear to me, I visited a lot of craft distilleries and realized that some of the issues that they have were avoidable. In fact, the one of the first conversations I ever had with Tripp, and one of the things that solidified this is my thinking was, I'd met with a lot of distillers who were talking about the problems they had, and what happens when something goes wrong? And I remember saying to Tripp, so Tripp, when you're distilling here, when this goes wrong, how do you get it back? And it was the look that I got back, the incredulous look of, what do you mean when it goes wrong? It never goes wrong. It doesn't go wrong. How can it possibly go wrong? And I said, okay, I think that I understand a little bit more now about how much I didn't know. So that was that experience.
I got a question for Tripp. So when
thank God.
Yeah. So you're off the seat now.
Yeah.
We'll get back to your childhood second here shortly. So when Joe approached you about this, you're coming from Brown Forman. They're kind of it's not broke, don't fix it. Been doing the same thing forever. Like, barrel proof back then was just coming. Not really many people were like, is this is crazy or this is great? What were your thoughts when he approached you about the company?
Well, back up just a little bit before I actually met Joe. When I left Brown Forman, I started a consulting company, and that's been 5 or 6 years ago, and have worked with craft distillers all over the country. Right as the boom started to take off, there were all these people that wanted to get into this business that had money but not knowledge. And when you have the real conversation about putting millions of dollars into a facility that's going to create a product that in 5 years you hope somebody's going to buy more than once, it's kind of daunting.
Yeah.
So my biggest pitch to my customers was, if you're sure you want to do this, okay, but why not build a brand first? So when I was with Kentucky Artisan Distillery for a few years, did some work for them, and that's where I met Joe. And when Joe and I were talking about, building his brand, I said, why did you build the brand first and not the distillery? And he said, because I know I don't have the skill set, and why do I want to put a bunch of money into something that I don't know if somebody's going to buy? So right then, it clicked. And we started blending together, and everything was just, we have this unique language when we talk to each other, even that we just know what the other's talking about.
Yeah.
And we did batch 2 and then batch 3, and then we did whiskey, and just on and on and on. The ideas kept going, and here we are.
Why did you all choose blending versus doing standard single barrels like people like to do? Why blending?
It's a lot. I mean, you kind of see what happens in the market now. It is a lot of MGPI single barrels that hit, and people buy them up or whatever. But you guys went a little bit different route. So talk about that.
I think when we get our barrels, we get these barrels from places that other people can get the same barrels if they put the time in, make the relationship, so on and so forth. And anybody can get those barrels and just put it in a bottle. There's no magic behind that. What we like to do is take those barrels and put together unique blends that create a taste that is, 1, not available, and 2, something that we've actually created. So we put our own spin on something. We're not just taking something and put it in a bottle and saying, here you go. We're really doing something with it. Now, there are some instances where we find a barrel and it's like, holy cow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
That goes into our single barrel selection. So that's where that actually started. Is that Joe and I sat down and had a conversation about a barrel that we found, and it's like, I really hate to screw up this flavor profile on this barrel. It's so good by itself. Let's just do a single barrel.
Yeah.
Because when we were blending, it's like, well, single barrel goes against what we were doing, but it was so good, we wanted to give justice to the product itself. Mm-hmm. So that's where the single barrel came in.
I don't mean to hog all the questions. I got one more, but. So when you're starting and you're sourcing these products, I'm kind of envisioning us going to do barrel picks, like me and Kenny just did one, and versus a big group like 17AFB that's had relationships with distilleries. Obviously they get the honey barrel, or they roll out the great stuff. So what is it like when you're starting up and you're sourcing barrels? Are they you're the new guy? How does that work? Are they kind of they got these companies that have existing relationships with? How does that work with getting the source products?
Well, they're not really the new guys too much anymore.
Not anymore, but I'm saying back in the day, whenever you're starting up.
Well, a couple of things. This is a relationship business, and over the years, I've established, Tripp's established relationships, and we go in or get products sent to us, and we taste it, and we're at a stage now where we couldn't possibly buy the amount of whiskey that's offered to us. So we get to really pick and choose. And so we get to pick and choose in lots. And we've done it enough that if we have a couple of samples from a production lot, we have a pretty good sense of what the range is going to be. And then we work with the barrels later, further. So because we can blend, we can tease out specific properties or characteristics or profiles by grouping the barrels together and blending them in a certain way. As Tripp said, though, then you've got those single barrels that we put aside for our single barrel program. That's always a balance too, because you don't want to sacrifice the greater good of the batch for the single barrel, but it's a balance.
I keep trying to put them in my basement, but I get vetoed on that every time.
Hey, you told me where you live now.
He does. He opens up these guys' truck, the tailgate's down, the barrel's rolling out there already.
Joe's like, what should we do with this? Well, I got a spot in the basement for it.
It'll age perfectly down there.
Yeah, it's a good aging environment. It's a perfect one.
So what's the average bottle count when you say you're doing a small batch, right? Because there's no technical term of what a small batch is. So how small is a small batch to barrel bourbon?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I've seen small batches, not ours, but as large as, what is that?
6,000, 7,000, 8,000 gallons. And that's probably the smaller side of the small batch. I think there are larger ones that are small batches, but
the answer to the question is, and this is I'm not being facetious, the size of the batch is largely determined by when we think it's the right batch size. So we have a target number in size that we like, and we try to hit that, because we're a company, we're a business, and we're trying to figure out how many cases a year we're going to sell and how many we want to sell, and we divide it up by the number of releases. But the perfect example of that is batch 15. We were looking for a batch size about double what it is, and when we're blending it, it was done. And we can talk more about that later, but that was done, and so that one was that size. Sometimes it's dictated by the product. Sometimes the product, there's a limitation of something we don't want to add more or older or different, and so we don't, and we will cut it then. Other times we can make the batch as large as we want. So there's really no fixed set size on what we're going to do on that.
So I'm an idiot. I have no idea what blending is, or like what the process is. I assume that you're taking like small samples from each barrel and then blending them, in a test lab or something. So blending them there, does that translate to like a bigger quantity, or is it, you're like, this is awesome here, but then we do it, 100x. Does it not translate?
Well, there's a lot of assumptions that go into putting that blend together. So when we pull all these samples and we blend in a lab, we're making the assumption that the barrels that we took are 100% representative of the lots of those barrels, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
So by making that assumption, we're also making the risk that we can take whatever that formulation works out to be, put it in a tank, blend it the way we want it, taste it, and if it's not where it needs to be, then we're comfortable being able to go to the barrels that we have, find the flavors that are missing, add those to the blend.
Okay.
To get as close as we can to what we had in the lab.
Gotcha.
So it's an assumed low risk, is a kind of the way to put it, right?
Absolutely.
The theoretical doesn't always, most times it doesn't translate, but it's close.
Yeah.
And then we can dial it in by adding.
Yeah, I didn't know if you're like, well, I got 4 ounces here that are awesome, but I got 200 gallons and oh shit, it tastes like we're screwed. Like dump it.
No.
Well, that's a 4-letter word.
Yeah.
We don't throw away anything.
Yeah.
we have dozens and dozens of finishing experiments going on, and so nothing gets wasted at all.
So if I had to guess, you came from more of a tasting, a palate kind of background, and you're very forward going with the blending. Now, Tripp, are you you take care of the distillation? Are you also pretty much a big part of this blending process as well?
Absolutely. I mean, Joe and I pick the barrels together, we blend it together, we taste it together. If one of us is out of town, they get a present overnighted that we taste and then have the conversation over the phone. We come to an agreement and make the changes accordingly.
It is 100% collaborative experience.
Yeah. So what's harder, blending or distilling?
Ooh, open-ended question.
I don't necessarily know that one is harder than the other. I think they're different. They're completely different in their own rights. Whereas with, you've got the science side, you got the craft side, right? So distilling, and I like it when people include the fermentation, the yeasting, everything, because the distilling is the easy part, right? There's a science that goes into that. So you have your yeast, you have a certain type of fermentation, and then you distill what you've created in your fermentation, and you create an alcohol. So there is a science behind what goes on there. While there is a science that goes on in blending is more of the craft side or the
artistic side.
There you go. Thank you. The artistic side, where we have some latitude to play with some things. We can take a few things and put it together and go, wow, I wonder what's going to happen here. If you do that with a fermentation, God knows what you're going to get, right?
Right.
So the blending side, again, is more, I guess, the crafting and the fun side, and the distilling side is more of a science-driven process.
And before you get a lot of people objecting to that, there is a science to the maturation process, of course.
Oh yeah.
But it's also you have more latitude and more things you can play with, and more ways you can make adjustments.
It's taste driven in our instance. Literally, it's taste driven.
Yeah.
Yeah, we blend. We started to blend. We blended to what we liked, and people responded to that. So we figured we should keep doing the same thing. If that worked once and it worked again, let's do it a third time.
Brilliant.
So you said in batch 15, you hit a certain point where you're trying to maybe double the amount of batch that you're trying to get out. So how does scale play into this, right? If you have this known entity, this known quantity that you've particularly been doing, and it's not like you're bringing on more people, you're bringing in more barrels. So how does scale really play a factor in making sure that you can replicate to what you want to do at a much larger percentage?
Well, that's a good question. We started out with, our first batch. I can't remember how it was. I want to say around under 1,000 cases or something like that. And we've steadily grown the batch size, and we're going to continue to grow it. So we have two things we can push on. We can either make the batches larger or do more releases. And so we're trying to balance both of those. We don't want to. We try to not overwhelm the marketplace with too many releases. At the same time, we have a pretty good sense of the rhythm of the market and when it's time to do a new release. So,
what is that schedule? Because why did you do batches, like, and number them? What was the thought behind that?
Instead of using like spirit animals,
could use letters, I guess.
Not batches, or just.
They say spirit animals would make good wood, right? This is the lion release.
I'm trying to think of the quote, but how much time is between each batch? I guess, are you like, there's one batch a year or one every 6 months? I don't even know. I mean,
it really varies in the way. There are a couple of factors at play. One is, we're in our 5th year, so we're expanding markets. We're in about 35 markets now. So we had to make sure that we had enough. We made enough of each batch to cover the markets and the release in the market. So we have to increase those, and then depending upon the time of the year. The last quarter of the year is the biggest spirits consumption. So we tend to put more releases in that period of time, and also larger releases so that we can cover the marketplace. This year, I think we're going to try to do. We're looking at roughly four bourbon releases plus the New Year edition. We'll continue our single barrel program, and then we can really do what we want. I mean, sometimes something may present itself that we want to do. Something is just so amazing, we want to do a release of something. The rum is a perfect example of that. And so we leave that open. We'll do a couple of releases of rye this year. We are increasing the single barrel program and maybe extending it into other spirits. We're really playing with the whiskey category. The American whiskey category is one that we love, and we have a new thing we'll talk about later that is going to give us even larger footprint in that area.
Oh, cool. So I think that's probably a good segue. So Ryan, we should probably pour something.
Yeah.
And then
what should we try next, Joe? Tripp?
Do you want to stay with bourbon?
We can try whatever. I don't care. Your choice, Ryan. But while we're doing this,
Have 15. Try bourbon 15.
try 15.
Okay.
15.
Let's do that. And then, so while we're doing this and while we're sampling this out, I kind of want you to go ahead and give us a rundown of, well, first off, why the extra L? And then, because I think
I
that's...
was wondering that too. I was like, am I stupid or like...
What extra L?
Yeah, it was like...
You mean they spelled it wrong?
Yeah, you guys didn't put that through spell check before you sent it to the TTP.
Is that why it was underlined in red? I thought they just liked it.
So yeah, let's talk about the extra L first before we start talking about all the different release or the different expressions and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm good.
I gotta get back to work.
Yeah, we have to work. As I told Fred the other day, bourbon was taken, so we had to take the next one, which is Barrell Bourbon. But there's a couple
wait,
reasons.
bourbon's actually taken?
No, it isn't.
Oh, I was going to say.
I don't even know, but it's actually I don't know. We'll have to check.
How generic could you get if you saw that on the shelf and just said bourbon right across it?
Is bourbon. A couple of things. It looks good. It's interesting. We thought it might raise enough questions for people to ask us this question, and then we can get them to try the product. It works also. It's a very interesting. It does interesting things in search engines. Mm-hmm. So it does both correct to single L and also double L, and so that has helped, and that helps us get our voice out there. Because we do everything online and everything with social media and everything with bloggers and everything with third party endorsements. So
You probably know a good ad guy, don't you?
Well, the part of advertising is the part that doesn't work is a waste of money. So
Yeah.
we put every dollar that we have is absolutely put back into the company and in there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it looks good on the label, and also more importantly, we wanted a word that said what we did. And so barrel strength, cask strength, barrel, it's from the barrel, it's of the barrel, it's about the barrel. That was about as close a word as we could use and found. And it worked. It has a nice alliteration. It works with everything.
But you haven't said why the extra L, though.
It looks good.
Yeah.
Look, there's 2 R's and 2 L's. It's perfect. We can do that.
It's nice and even.
There you go. That's
Yeah.
the story behind it.
Yeah, I thought it might help on trademark, but that isn't true. It doesn't really help with a trademark at all because it's the same word, so it doesn't really help. But we saw it and we liked it. It just was different enough, and it stuck.
Right. There you go.
It's that simple. There's no great story behind this one.
Yeah.
There is no great story. But I'll tell you a weird thing is there was a guy. I grew up in Boston, and there was a guy in the 1600s named Joseph Barrell, spelled like that, who was a geologist, which is like sort of a weird thing, and it had no connection. But I found that out later, and it was sort of interesting. So maybe
He'll be your mascot or something.
maybe that could be yeah. Oh, so actually, the better story would be that's an old family name.
Yeah.
That's
No,
There you go.
You gotta,
Okay.
gotta have a good,
Okay,
you have to
strike
have a
the
good
rest of
fable
that.
and bourbon.
The 2 L's are there because it's an old family name.
That's right.
That's a much faster answer.
It sounds
That's
like
a
you
better
went
one.
down the Google rat hole there. You just keep clicking until you can't click anymore. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's talk about some of the what you have in what people can find on when they go to the liquor store when they're looking. What exactly are they looking at? We don't have to get necessarily into individual batches. I don't think that matters because, as you had said, they're all different. Once it's gone, it's gone. Start looking for the next one. So talk about, first we'll talk about the bourbon, then hit whiskey, rye, so on and so forth.
Okay. So the flagship was bourbon because it's bourbon. And bourbon is the easiest thing. Everybody wants to try bourbon. The second product we released, and so we like to have on the shelf, either in a bar or in a store, at least 2 or 3 expressions of the bourbon because it gives people a choice and people who know can sort through it out, and people who don't know you can find out by looking at our website what is there. So we also designed it in a way that we could telegraph the bourbon from differentiate from the whiskey, from the rum, from the rye. So that's fairly straightforward and clear. And also the whole packaging design was one that we knew that was going to be a big part of our advertising and branding and messaging, and so we wanted it to be memorable and look like that. So we started with the bourbon, then we added American whiskey. And the American whiskey category is terrific because there's a lot of latitude you have. You can do lots of different things with American whiskey. And it's largely an under, I don't want to say appreciated, but
no, I think
bourbon
that's probably not a bad word to use, to be honest with you. I mean, if you go, I mean, you can talk to somebody like Michter's. You see Michter's bourbon, you see American Michter's whiskey, you see the same thing. I'm sure more people, at least that listen to this podcast, are going to gravitate towards bourbon, right?
Yeah.
The greater market, who knows? They think they're going there for bourbon. They see bourbon. However, I think American whiskey, as you said, it has a lot more potential of what it could be, only because of you can do a lot of different things with it, whether it is reusing a barrel 3 times or whether it's anything like that. However, it just hasn't made the splash yet that I think most most consumers are going to start driving at and really reaching for.
But I think you'll see it. I am.
People get bored, so they'll look for new things.
The issue has been the name. It's a blended whiskey. And blended whiskey has, for people who are older, it means grain neutral spirits and a little bit of something else put in it, blended into a thing. Our products are all blended pure from barrels. That's it. There's nothing else that is in there. Also, the whiskey category also gives us a lot of latitude with finishes. We can do a lot with that. I mean, we're purists. We will. Can I say this? We will never finish. We'll probably never finish a bourbon. Unless we were using it as part of a whiskey, because I think that the flavor of bourbon, that's what the regulations are. It
is what it is.
Yeah.
Bourbon is what it is.
We play by the rules. Bourbon is this is how it's defined, and so that's how it is. And also, there's a purity about it. There's something really nice about that.
I'm sure a lot of folks would find that admirable too, because you can talk to other blenders, and some people say that barrel finishes are the way of the future because there's so much different that you could do. However, there's this other segment of the market that are purists, right? And they want just a good bourbon. They don't want some other bourbon that's been masked behind, a Madeira cast finish or something like that, right? They want something that's pure. And I think people can probably relate and gravitate towards it.
This episode of Bourbon Pursuit is made possible through listeners like you, supported through Patreon, and with partnerships brought to you by the following. I'm like many of you. I've got a family outside of this hobby we call bourbon. They always come first, so naturally, I continually have to think about what I have to do to provide for them. Bills, the home, college tuition, and just a lifestyle that keeps us happy. However, there's always the unexpected if something does happen to me, so I have to make sure all those things are still possible for my family. Life insurance, it really used to be a pain because I'd be on the phone for hours, or I had to deal with an agent that was like a used car salesman. And don't even get me started on lab work when I had to go to doctor's offices. Fortunately, there's Ethos. Ethos has honest and upfront pricing with an online application that only takes 10 minutes to complete. And the best part? No doctor's office appointment is even necessary for policies under $1 million. So it's worth your time to go check it out. Get a free quote at pursuit.getethos.com. So in 10 minutes, you're going to have that peace of mind that you've been waiting for. That's pursuit.getethos.com. Sterling Cut Glass is the official whiskey and tasting glass supplier to distilleries across the country and is also the official glassware of Bourbon Pursuit. Sterling has contracted with the finest European crystal factories to bring the best quality glassware into their Kentucky warehouse and production facility. If you've been following us on social media, you'll see how their deep etched glassware is truly the best in the industry. I know because I searched up and down the internet to find out who was the best. Come to find out, Sterling Cut Glass supplies almost all the distilleries on the Bourbon Trail, and they're also the official glassware of the PGA Tournament and the Kentucky Derby. Make your logo shine on Capita nosing glasses, Glencairns, neat tasters, rocks, tumblers, and more. They're offering free etched samples to whiskey societies nationwide. Simply email spirits@sterlingcutglass.com, include your logo, and mention Bourbon Pursuit. Take a look at their online catalog by going to bourbonpursuit.com and clicking on the banner for Sterling Cut Glass.
The world's biggest bourbon, music, and food festival is back. Bourbon and Beyond 2018 with Sting, John Mayer, Robert Plant, and the Sensational Space Shifters, Lenny Kravitz, Counting Crows, David Byrne, Sheryl Crow, Brian Setzer, Kaleo, Government Mule, Kev Mo, and so much more. Bourbon and Beyond is back. The celebration of the spirit and soul of Kentucky, September 22nd and 23rd at Champions Park. The world's top bourbons, paired with celebrity chefs, Louisville's top restaurants, and iconic musicians. With Sting, John Mayer, Robert Plant, and the Sensational Space Shifters, Lenny Kravitz, and beyond. For all the details, go to bourbonandbeyond.com. Bourbon and Beyond 2018, September 22nd and 23rd at Champions Park.
You know, you can talk to other blenders, and some people say that barrel finishes are the way of the future because there's so much different that you could do. However, there's this other segment of the market that are purists, right? And they want just a good bourbon. They don't want some other bourbon that's been masked behind, a Madeira cast finish or something like that, right? They want something that's pure, and I think people can probably relate and gravitate towards that.
And I think that's kind of what led us into the whiskey to begin with, because it gave us that freedom to kind of play around with the finish.
Yeah, and not mess with your core product.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the amazing thing is how much impact just even a fractional amount of barrels that are finished can have in the whole. We blend to subtleties. We're not going to hit you over the head. I mean, some of our other whiskeys, there are several different finishes in there, and if you really listen closely, you can pull them out. You can get them, but we like that because it's the whole experience that you like. So then we expanded into rye next, and you mentioned the 95% or MGP or just buying MGP product. That's it. The 95% MGP product is probably one of the greatest ryes on the planet. So it's great.
There has to be a reason why everybody buys it. Right?
Yeah. But we wanted to do something a little bit different. We did our 2 rye releases are not straight ryes. They're whiskeys. They're rye whiskeys because we blended from different states, and so that no longer makes it a straight. The one thing that we debated a lot is with rye, when you call it a whiskey, you can put other in there, flavoring. That's something we'll never do. That's to the purity. But we also didn't want to do the straight 95% rye because it's been done. I mean, it's out there and it's great. And maybe someday we'll do it. We have a couple of things up our sleeve later, maybe.
Basement.
I wish. It wouldn't last long down there.
You would not believe how big that basement is, or how much stuff he's got. It's impressive. It is impressive. And so we started with a blend of a Tennessee. Batch 1 was a Tennessee rye and an Indiana rye that we blended together. They were different mash bills, totally different mash bills.
Kentucky people, huh? Going
right above.
And then in batch 2 was the core of it was a Polish malted rye that we tasted and loved, and we bought it and we blended it with an Indiana rye. So rye has been an interesting experience for us. That we love the flavor of rye, but we wanted to take a different take on it. Mm-hmm. And then rum. Rum is another world apart from everything else.
Yeah, why rum?
Yeah,
why'd you think, you know what? Let's let's do a rum. Like, what was the thought?
Why not?
Literally just
why not? Yeah.
Well, also because we've been playing around with rums and blending rum a lot over the just kind of on our own, and rum is if you read and when you read about rum, it goes from basically almost a grain neutral spirit of vodka to something that the terroir is just mind blowing. Some of the real good Jamaican.
The what terroir? I don't know what that word
essence,
means.
The essence from the earth, from the grain, from the minerals in the soil, from that environment. Everything that makes up that product from that soil.
Okay.
And
I should know that. I'm an ag guy.
so we looked at a number of rums, and the truth and the funniest part of the Jamaican rum that we had was we met somebody who had that rum, and we were in the lobby of a Marriott hotel, and we were meeting, and I will tell you, I was about as far away from as you are to me. He opened the bottle. And I said, we'll take it. It's that pungent. It was just that amazing. And then, it's a pot still Jamaican rum. It is just, it's syrupy, it's thick, the essence. It's just, we loved it. And so we also think there's a pretty good crossover between people who drink whiskey and savor whiskey and people who are drinking and savoring the really, really fine rums. And
are these rums, are they, I don't know where you're getting from, and you don't have to divulge, but is it, because we talk about, we've had Fred on, we talked about rum pursuit. Is it the purest kind of rum where people aren't talking?
Because rum, there's really no this is what it is and this is what it has to be. So you're like, how do you know? Or
I think he made a really good point in his book about how people say that it is not regulated, but it is an intensely regulated business by region or by island or by country.
Okay.
They have a lot of standards, and I didn't know that until I really started looking into it, and it's fascinating. Again, we go by taste. So, if we like the taste of it, then that's the right thing for us.
And are these rums, are they like barrel finished rums? Because like bourbon cask finished rums, is it, you really think what you're going for is you're going for the American whiskey drinker that also wants to get into rum? Is that kind of your thought process?
Well, our first release of rum was the Jamaican rum that was aged. It was 7 years old, and it was aged in bourbon barrels in Jamaica. And then we bought it. We got it here. We immediately put it in. It comes over in drums because there would be nothing left.
Yeah.
It comes over in drums. Then we actually put that in our batch 7 barrels right away. And then we bottled some of it. We reserved some of it. And so the second release of the rum, called The Tale of Two Islands, is that Jamaican rum finished in Isla casks.
A year older.
Mm-hmm. A year older, yeah. And that was a pretty cool thing. We had some, and we knew that. You can jump in anytime. We experimented with lots of different finishes, but hands down, the surprise was.
Yeah, we had 8 or 10 different little bottles there, and Joe and I sat down one afternoon and said, "What are we gonna do next? What's kind of cool?" And we took some of the most off the wall stuff you can think of, and we're putting it together with whiskey. And it's like, none of this stuff is really all that great. And then it's like, well, let's try Scotch. Scotch and rum, no way.
Yeah.
And we tried it. It was like, wow, this is
really?
It was just like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we went with it.
Interesting.
And then the
Islay is the region like where Lafroig and all that's from. Okay, yeah,
that's right. That's right. We can't tell where the barrels are from.
Right.
What's really nice about those barrels
Kenny's editing job
is the Kentucky distillery that used them first is on one side, and the distillery in Scotland that used them is on the other side.
It was kind of cool.
That is pretty cool. Yeah.
You can still just barely see the
stamp on it.
The stamp from the bourbon distillery. That was pretty cool.
But the rum is a relatively small part of our portfolio. It's more because we like it,
Or did you have a timeshare down in Jamaica and you needed to visit it more?
I keep pushing that.
Yeah,
we're not there yet.
Yeah, we need to have an offsite with a breakout and whiteboards, and we'll do some brainstorming and we'll go down.
Team meeting.
Yeah. I think Jamaica sounds good.
Yeah.
Let me know. I'm down for that too.
You can get that in Monterey.
And so
that's right.
Another one that we didn't talk about that was in the bourbon category was you had mentioned earlier is the New Year edition. So kind of talk about the idea of why the New Year edition.
You want me to do that one?
Sure. Give me a break.
The New Year bourbon is something that we came up with a couple of years ago, where we could pretty much, it was no holds barred. Let's take as much bourbon as we can find that we like, and let's put it together and come up with something that's just crazy. And literally, that's what it was. We started getting stuff from everywhere and throwing it all together. And I think the first one had 3 or 4 different states in it.
It was a little more. Yeah,
5 different states.
I think it was 5.
And then this past year, I think it had 7 or 8 different states in it. And it's another little fun project
of like straight bourbon.
Straight bourbons,
Wow.
from different states. and we would just get a few barrels here, a few barrels there, and like, well, let's just try this, let's just try that, and it gives us another little project that we can play with and blend stuff from all over the country.
I mean, didn't you think also I thought it was going to be easier than it was, but there's so many different mash bills that all have different frequencies of flavor, and
barrel profiles,
yeah,
and everything.
It took more time. We thought it was going to be easy.
Yeah,
it took more time.
I wouldn't. I think
it took a lot of time.
Yeah, I think if you're sourcing, because I think it's pretty easy if you're getting it from these three major regions, right? Kentucky, Indiana, and Tennessee.
Right. Kentuckiana,
C. So
the barrel bourbon.
But as soon as you start expanding out, I'm sure it's harder and harder to find a lot of those barrels to source because of new entrants in the market. Maybe not aged as well, climates, everything like that,
sure.
right? So I'm sure it definitely had a little more of a advanced characteristic to it.
But it's also cool to take barrels from those different regions and try to capitalize on the flavors that come from that region. So something from Minnesota might not have this great crazy barrel characteristic like we get here, but the liquid that was put in there might have been such a great liquid that all it needed was a little bit of barrel contact to pull some of the toasted flavors out. And maybe it's not as dark, but it makes up for that with the flavor. And part of the New Year was trying to find cool new flavors from different regions in the country that were driven by the maturation environments, and incorporate those into a blend with some bourbons that we usually use.
Yeah,
and you contrast with something from Texas where it practically boils away.
Right.
Where I don't know how you make money in Texas. I think it's half a barrel.
Yeah, the Angels get plenty there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But then you've got a lot of barrel profile there to play with and balance it off. But that's been a really fun project, seeing the different products from around the United States. There's a lot of good product out there.
Absolutely. And so the last one we're going to talk about is the Infinite release. Did I say that correctly?
It's the Infinite Barrel Project.
Okay, so go ahead, spill. Like what's it all about?
Okay. The thinking here is that I bet you have an infinity bottle somewhere.
Oh yeah.
No. Okay. All right. So people, it's sort of an interesting idea that people
explain for people. I know what it is, but explain for people what is an infinity bottle.
It's usually an old wedding gift that you had. There was a decanter that you don't know what to do with and was sitting on the shelf.
That is exactly my case.
Yeah. And you're going, and then one night
you hit it on the head.
You're looking at it one night and go, if I put a little of what's left in this bottle in there and then I add a little of the next one, I wonder what it tastes like. And so that's how the thing evolves. There's probably a lot of people who were more deliberate about it.
Yeah.
But people have infinity bottles, and
if you have an infinity bottle, don't make the mistake I did. People thought it was house bourbon and not my infinity bottle, and it got really dinged on Derby last year. But so it's slowly building its way up. But don't do that. Hide your infinity bottle.
Hide it. Yeah. So we spent a lot of time just talking about ideas and things, and we have a stack of ideas of things that we're going to do, and Tripp and I and Will Schrager, our national director, who is probably the most knowledgeable person about spirits that I've ever met in my life. I mean, I don't know how he crams it all in his head, but he does. And so we were kicking around some ideas, and we came up with the idea of what if we had a whiskey that we started with, and then just as we bottled, we added more whiskey to it. And we were like, oh, and so that's sort of a nod to the infinity bottle, and so then Tripp found which we're still in the process of acquiring.
It's a huge barrel over in France that we may or may not have to have custom made, but it's going to be, it could be a couple of 1,000 gallons of American white oak that will be toasted and charred to our specifications that this project will live in. So we're going to get it shipped to us, and the liquid that we're putting into the Infinity Project is going to be in that barrel all the time. We're going to pull some out and then put some back in, and it's just going to be this ongoing thing. So we're adding liquid to it, but it's also changing because it's still in a barrel.
That's awesome.
But until then, we have to put it back in the small barrels. But the issue there is I think there's people living in that barrel, so we have to wait until they move out, and then when they move out, we'll be able to get it.
And so, I mean, it's the project is just like the name, right? The thought that you're going to take a few gallons from every barrel and keep throwing it in there. Like what's
a few hundred gallons.
Barrels.
Yeah.
Well,
I meant from here until infinity, like whenever. Whenever bourbon's not a thing anymore, God heaven forbid, right?
Don't say such a thing.
Yeah, that's heresy.
Well, and what we're doing is when we just finished the bottling of the first release, and it hasn't shipped yet, and we're doing it by bottling date. So that bottling date was February 12th, I think it is. Yeah, and so on our website we'll list the whiskeys that are in there, and then the next bottling, which is actually already.
That's why I'm so dirty.
Yeah.
It all morning.
We will we will indicate what whiskeys we replaced the initial bottling with on the website. So it's all driven by the date. So on the front of the bottle you'll see the bottling date, and then that will give you an indicator, so you can go to the website and see what exactly was in there. And it's all barrel strength, cask strength, and. What we've found so far is we really like what we got. So
every infinity bottle I've tasted, or like when I go on barrel picks, and you have like all the samples left together and you throw them together, they always like turn out to be like the best thing of any single barrel, and it's crazy how that happens.
It was pretty incredible. When we put it together, we pulled a bottle out of it, and we're one afternoon we're sitting around having a drink, and it's. Like, okay,
that's all we do.
It's good. It's good. I just wonder how it's going to be accepted, and you're always asking these questions because it's always so different.
Yeah.
And so we gave it to a few people, and the feedback we were getting was amazing. They're just like, wow, this is the best whiskey you guys have blended yet. And it's like, oh, really? That's awesome. So it was. So we felt a lot better about putting it out there. It wasn't just going to be Joe and me buying the product.
I think
we were just down at the New Orleans Bourbon Festival, and we brought it with us, and we got a lot of real time feedback on it. It was.
Well, I think different is good because bourbon's great, but like I said, people get bored, and like you're ready for. At least I am. I'm always looking for the next thing. Like dabbled into rum when Fred showed us rum. I was like, oh man, this is something different I enjoy, so I think different is not a bad thing.
Be careful tasting rums with Fred.
Yeah. Oh, that day I was like, whoa. I had to clear my afternoon. I had to clear my afternoon after that.
And so, Joe, you had mentioned that you said you have a stack of ideas that you all want to do. And, when you think about what you can see in the marketplace and what shelf space, what it takes, why keep going with new ideas? Because it seems like you're trying to push out something, maybe whether it's the rum or the rye, the bourbon, multiple batches now in fit. Like you're trying to do something new every single year, and you're trying to make it a consistent line item, right? So what is there going to be an end here of your ideas that? I mean, at some point you're going to run out of colors to put on the front of the labels here. But I mean, what's the idea of just keeping it of status quo instead of just going haywire with ideas still?
Well, I think our core customer has really come to expect that. I think they like the idea of the new release of a bourbon. So within the spirit type, having a something different and new to look forward to is what we are continuing that, and people like that. We're going to continue the single barrel program, which is a little bit above that, and then we have we're going to do another different release that we're going to get to later this year. That are those things that are just that we think are that exceptional that don't even fall into any of those categories. So we're going to stay with that. We also consider projects like the Tale of Two Islands to fall within the rum. It's within the rum category. But there's a lot of other places we can go with rums where we're innovating trying different little changes and new things. Also, it's interesting and it's fun. And
how cool is it to come up with an idea and then bring it to fruition and have other people tell you that it's great, it's the best stuff they've ever had, and all these different things. I mean, it's really cool to be able to bring something to the table for people to enjoy and get that feedback.
Yeah.
When it was just a thought.
We love what we do, and we like to share what we do with other people. And I think that the people who buy our products, I think that a lot of them understand that and they appreciate it. So it's just amazing. It's fun. Every day is a new fun day.
Yeah.
I don't want to do the same thing every day.
That's right.
Every day is a very different day for us, I have to say.
So Tripp, is there any ideas he comes at you with and you're like, man, that's just not going to work? What are you thinking? You're like, we're gonna.
It's usually like, how do we make this work?
Yeah.
No, we don't ever say no. It's not possible. We always come up with a way to do it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But having said that, there are dumb ideas.
But
Give me a dumb idea. Give me an idea that you just rejected. So you can let somebody else go out there and try it and then fail.
The garlic flavored bourbon, I think.
Oh, there you go.
The garlic pickle bourbon. No, I'm just kidding.
I was like,
Actually,
there are no failures.
Mixed with pickle juice.
well, that's a pretty popular drink from what I understand. Bourbon with followed up with pickle juice.
Yep. I've seen that.
I don't think I can.
I don't
do
think it's for me, but
No, hard
Silver
pass.
Dollar has it.
do they?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So let's go ahead and actually, I got another question here. This is really more for Joe. How long was it that you thought about doing this until you actually started sourcing the product? This actually comes from one of our listeners. Mm-hmm. And how big was really your first purchase when you were looking into this?
Yeah, it was almost a year to the day. It was the Saturday after Thanksgiving when the inspiration hit, and we bottled the first product in November of that year. So it was almost a year, and we sold our first case in January 5th of that year. And,
that's my birthday.
Yeah, we sold your birthday.
Who did you sell to?
It was a Saturday. It was a Friday. It was snowing like crazy in New York City. And it was Park Ave Liquors. And I went in and just said, "Hi, you don't know me.
You're buying my product.
What do you think?" And they tasted it, loved it. They bought 5 cases, and I said, "Well, this is easy." And then
when was the tipping point for the brand? Like, kind of made it, just a local to a national, big national type recognized company.
I don't know. We're not anywhere near where we think that the top of the market is. We've been slowly expanding carefully into states, and I don't think that there really was a point. No.
Now that will sneak up on you.
Oh, the rum? Yeah. I just poured myself some rum, so he's like, "You better watch out.
Be careful."
Yeah.
And
132.
I poured a little healthy. Little healthy.
It doesn't.
You say it's 132?
Yeah.
It doesn't drink like 132 though.
Great. And so another kind of follow along with that is when you were buying these. I mean, did you buy it with the intent that you're going to sell it right away, or did you buy, say, a younger product? We're going to age it and we'll figure it out down the line. Like,
the first time, I mean, everything is a test, and I literally did take the first blended product to the handful of people that I thought were expert and would give me real feedback. They would say, "This is awful," or "It's great," and that's what I wanted. So the first couple of iterations really were to prove of concept, and once the proof of concept happened, then we started investing and buying it. And we look at everything and we look at everything like, what can we use now and what will be good soon or what will be good in the long term. So we just start picking and saving and filling in, and it's just been a whole long process of doing that, of finding, and as I said, this year is, and even really last year has been, we have hard decisions to make of what we're going to buy that are spectacular whiskeys that we've come across. That's the hard part. That is the hard part of saying no to things. It's easy to say no to bad whiskey. That's not a hard one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's hard to say no to good whiskey.
I mean, that
sounds like a Mark Twain thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, when you think about it from that perspective, how often are you actually able to say no because of it's? I mean, as the market continues and more people enter it, you're not gonna the competition's not gonna slow down. So how do you say no to good whiskey to think, okay, well, somebody else could pick this up and run with it, instead of you just saying, okay, I'll keep taking it? I mean, is there a problem with that? Is there a shortage? I mean, what's your thought process?
It's a big market. We have a big market, and also we're confident that just because you have the same whiskey that we have, you may not be able to do what we did with it. Fake reference, but
Another Mark Twain.
But seriously, there are other people have access to the same whiskeys, and they blend them differently, and they get a different outcome.
Or they put them directly in the bottle.
Or they don't taste it. They just source it, put it in the bottle, and put a label on it. I mean, there's a lot of that in the market, and we just take a little more care. So, and you can't ask me the follow-up question of who it is, but we.
Who is it?
Yeah. So we did.
Let's start now.
We had that experience of I knew that another company bought the exact same product that we did, even the same production day, and we just blended it differently.
The rye is, it's so different. I like it. I love it. It's not like any rye I've ever had.
That was our goal with the rye, really. It's most people think of a rye, they think that big, bold, in-your-face spice bomb.
Yeah.
And while we didn't want to completely eliminate that, we wanted to round it out with some other flavors.
Yeah.
So there is the traditional spicy rye flavors in there, but we rounded it out with some sweeter, fruity, floral notes.
That's what I say. It's very fruity for a rye whiskey.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It reminds me of like Redbreast or something, like an Irish whiskey almost. I don't know. I don't know why. It's good.
I can tell you with 100% certainty there is no Irish whiskey in our rye. There is, however, Irish whiskey in the Infinite.
The Infinite, yeah.
In the Infinite?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, we like it. It's that the malted barley, the malted rye is a particularly nice.
Yeah.
A nice
it's
flavor.
very unique. I like it.
It is. And batch 15, is one of those. You can talk about that. It was, those.
I don't even remember batch 15.
Oh, it's the one with the fruit notes that we got to, and okay.
I don't know.
I'll go there.
I'm stuck on today's couple
You're on,
projects.
So one of the things that we both really like are those tropical fruit notes, or the fruit notes, or as I said to somebody the other day, juicy fruit, and they looked at me like, "What's a juicy fruit?" And he said, "You mean
it's some good bubble gum?" Then
yeah,
That's right.
Well, that's what I thought. And he said, "You mean dragon fruit?" I said, "Yes, dragon fruit." That's exactly what I meant.
What's dragon fruit?
I don't even know what. Yeah, I've never had dragon fruit.
Oh, the
I've had passion fruit.
no, dragon fruit is a flavor of vitamin water.
Oh,
So
okay.
it tastes like. So okay, dragon fruit tastes like juicy fruit.
Okay, there we go.
So
I'll take your word
we
for
like
it.
those. We like those tropical notes, and you get those in some of the older bourbons, but they're very elusive and they're subtle, and it's easy to blend them away, which is how we got to the smaller batch of batch 15. Which is we were blending it and we tasted it and it was there and we just said stop because
remember that.
Okay, now you remember that?
I remember what if we added some of this, and it was like, no,
No,
we're
don't mess
done.
it up.
We
It's
don't want to
there.
mess it up. Yeah.
Don't screw with it.
So that's something that I really like about 15. It's and I'm a little fickle. I mean, I'm fickle to the point where the new release is my favorite anyway.
Right.
But I do like that one a lot.
So I kind of want to move a little bit into what's happening right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had hinted at it earlier in the show. We're going to come full circle and kind of talk about the new operations that you're building. So talk about to the point of are you contract distilling today or just straight sourcing as you're building out your new distillery?
Contract sourcing meaning
Are you contract distilling?
distilling. Oh, okay. Well, let's start with we decided to do the least sexy distillery you can imagine. That was our intent. The intent was it was an old data facility. It was built to withstand bombs.
It's like a Faraday cage.
Yeah. And so there was a clean room where we do the bottling, and we have air handlers in there that we have I would say unequivocally the people who work in the bottling room have the best treated air in
Yes.
Kentucky.
Climate control, moisture control,
Right.
everything. It's perfect.
There are 3 units in there that are the size of this room that keep the thing humming.
Yeah, I work in IT, so I've been in plenty of data centers
Okay.
in my life, so
Yeah.
I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Got some clean air.
And also, yeah, it's cleaner. And also,
Raised floor, like everything.
yeah. Well, yeah. And not anymore. It's gone. The other thing about it is it got us to within inches of the the building code that we needed to distill. So it was an easy decision to do that. Their control room is our lab.
And this
So
is all
it
in
works out.
Louisville, by the way,
It's
for
in Louisville.
everybody. Okay.
Yep. So we're just and we started with what we know. We moved the blending operation in there and the bottling operation in there. Now all of our permitting is done. It took a little bit longer than we thought, and we got our DSP in the summer, and so we're now sorting through exactly how we're going to build. So we're not distilling yet. We're still Tripp is still designing and as we go, and we're looking at the end of the year maybe to be ready. It's some of that's out of our control. Some of that is simply when somebody decides to finish building the thing that we need.
Are you like scratching, like really itching to the point where you really want to start distilling, or are you kind of like, well, right, we can get there when we get there?
I've pretty much been itching for that.
Yeah.
I think probably when Joe talked to
day
you,
one.
he sold you on these dreams of where it's going to be, and
Oh,
we were
were
like,
No,
he didn't sell me on anything.
Nope.
We were
Nope.
in line the whole time.
good.
Nope.
But
Don't overpromise.
Yeah, the great thing about the distillery for us is that it's going to give us the ability to create all of these flavors that we're looking for. So right now, we go to the different distilleries or wherever we're getting our barrels, and we know kind of what these flavors are going to be. And if we need a certain flavor, we go to that area and pull one of those barrels. And so the distillery is really going to allow us to get even more complex in our products, because we can now, through different yeast strains, different grain bills, different fermentation temperature profiles, different distillation techniques, all of these things can create different flavors. So we can literally create what we want, and when it's ready, we now have an infinite amount of flavors to pick from.
That sounds like a pain in the ass, though. Like doing all these different mash bills, having to reset, clean.
What do you think? I mean, every time we do a batch, we have to file a call
Yeah,
to redo everything.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was easy, everybody'd do it.
Right. So is that your all's plan to do all the different mash bills that you love and kind of
Absolutely.
recreate them? Okay.
And then just layer those into our blends. Our model's not going to change.
I was about to say, I was like, it is changing a little bit where you're distilling it. I mean, and I guess the real question is why distill when you haven't had a problem getting barrels before?
Good. Here you go.
Because it allows us to create even more complex and different products. Like I said, so we can create the different flavors using yeast and grain. So we can take the stuff that we're sourcing and add other things that we want to even further, that's what I'm looking for, further exemplify the flavors that are available.
It gives us a bigger sandbox to play in. We can do more.
Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, sandbox.
Box.
Well, I use that because it's
So much
technology
easier.
term. Where we've played around with scenarios of using relatively low percentage of our barrels to a higher percentage, and we will complement and supplement where we're going. Essentially, Barrel Craft Spirits becomes a customer of Barrel Distilling, even though it's the same company. We're not going to sell our product to anybody else, but we just love the idea of having that dimension that we can
Control.
and inventory and control that we
Yeah.
can play. Yeah, I mean, there's things that I've tasted at Tripp as Distill that are pretty amazing, and the idea that we could actually have that and layer that into whatever it is else we have is just, it's mind blowing. We could just.
Would you take your own distillate and blend it with other products that you're sourcing from now? Is that a possibility? Don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was like, are you going to stop sourcing at that point?
No.
No, that's not.
Okay. That's what I meant. Like,
Yeah.
No.
As our products mature and they get to the point where we like what's there and we want to use it, we'll just layer that in with the source products where we're getting now, and like Joe said, it's a bigger sandbox playing. We have all the stuff that we're sourcing now, plus we have everything we're going to be making. We've got all kinds of stuff to play with.
Yeah, I can envision blends being our own. I mean, again, as I said, I don't know. I can envision blends being our own product only. I can envision us using our blend with something else that complements it, and even doing some releases still that have nothing of ours in there. I mean, it's really wide. It is literally wide open, and we're just giving ourselves options so that as we expand, we can produce more and different things. Our model isn't going to change. It'll evolve, but it's not going to change.
When you do releases, we'll be like, this is a barrel, barrel bourbons only blend versus a barrel with other blends. Like, would
Absolutely.
you be transparent about that as well?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
of course. Yeah.
Cool.
Oh yeah. I mean, because
Not that I care, but some people would.
no, we can't wait to put on the label that this is partially ours, all ours, none of ours.
Right.
Whatever the combination is. No, we look forward to that day. Mm-hmm. The labels are ready to go.
So what was the idea of building this because don't get me wrong, I don't think there's a distillery around here in Kentucky that is being built that is not revamping it for a destination for visitors, for everything like that. What was your idea of just saying, like, we're just going to have a factory, like, make it whatever it is, right? Because I know even Heaven Hill's looking at making even Bernheim, their factory, a place where people can put on hard hats and go walk around because nerds are getting into it. So what's your thought?
Well, I don't know if you've ever been on that side of the business, but distilling and barrel aging and making your product is a whole business in and of itself. When you add a gift shop and tourism, those are separate businesses. You've got to have new models. You have to have people to run those businesses, and that's just something that takes away from what our focus is, which is really what we're putting in this bottle. So what Joe and I talked about was creating a bare bones facility that, from a science aspect, and through some innovations that we've come up with, allow us to create all of these things that we've been talking about, and not have all these frills. We're not going to have some big beautiful distillery that everybody can come see. We're literally going to have a big room with the bare bones necessities to create great bourbon.
The factory.
The factory.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different business. It's a totally different business model, and it's just not something that we really want to do. We're everybody's busy, and we love interacting with people, but we want to do it. We want to make this the place we do all the work, and that's it.
It's not to say 3 years down the line you couldn't revamp it or do something, right?
Or do an offsite, like the Evan Williams Experience downtown or something, something like that.
If the business gets to that point, we're not against, going outside this place and making a nice big place, but whereas Heaven Hill's got a little bit deeper pocketbook than we do, that tourism is great for them. Plus, it's educational, and they'll have somebody that will take care of those things. And I hope we get to a point where we can provide that.
Yeah, and the other part of it is our business isn't dependent on tours and selling T-shirts. We sell merchandise.
Not yet.
But the merchandise we sell is a little bit above our cost because people have asked for the product, and we design it, provide it, and that's great. But it's not. We're not in the T-shirt business, or we're not in the sweatshirt business, and that takes a fair amount to manage it. I mean, we have somebody managing it now, and it's a big job just doing that. Spending time from the day during the day, doing tours is just not what we want to do. Our time in the market when we're not there, we're out meeting people and meeting distributors and meeting retailers and meeting owners and
hanging
that's
out with podcasters.
Yeah. Well, this has been a fun day. So.
Oh yeah, it's been a blast.
And so, Joe, another kind of question towards you. I mean, we've known each other for probably a little over a year now. We were talking about when you were trying to buy a house and trying to find something here in Louisville, and I think I remembered asking you, and I think it's a good way to kind of put it to our guests as well, is if you're looking to build a factory model, like why Louisville? Why Kentucky? Like you can start a distillery anywhere, and you can probably pay less taxes in less states or in other states as well. So why focus the model here rather than going somewhere else?
That's a good question.
He wasn't gonna get me to move.
So that's the first reason. Is
Tripp's got too much stock in his basement.
Tripp wasn't going to move. Well, the fact is, I fell in love with Kentucky the first time I came here 25 years ago. It was just, I just loved it. I loved the place.
Yeah.
I really liked it. And we were lucky enough to be able to do this, and I commuted for many years part-time. We kept all of our operations were based here. I was lucky enough to be able to move down here full time. The main reason is the resources here. Everything that we need is here. We can reach out from where we are and touch the right fabric here, the right welder, anything. Anything is right here. The raw materials are here. The knowledge base is here. The resources are here. And it's Kentucky, and people, and for good or bad, Kentucky is associated with bourbon. Period.
Yeah.
And it's like still a lot of people don't realize.
I went to a Jim Gaffigan show, and he was like, "I love Louisville. It's the only place that has their own alcohol." He's like, "It's not alcohol. It's bourbon. And you must drink it with no ice, no mixers."
And everybody you were dealing with a population of 100% bourbon experts. Everybody,
exactly. We all think we know what we're talking about.
It comes with the driver's license.
We think we know bourbon and basketball.
That's
we think we do.
I think that's probably true.
Yeah.
And so, kind of another question before we start wrapping this up is storage, right? Where I've read that you are housing a lot of barrels at Castle and Key,
Tripp's basement.
Basement. So, at what point are you going to start running out of storage? Or are you going to start building facilities to be able to house barrels? And we
make the call to
we know Donald Blinko now. So what's your thought?
The funny thing is we even delay taking ownership sometimes because we're going to put it. It's an issue, and we've actually come up with we're going to continue storing barrels where we store them, but we've come up with, I think, a solution that we're working on to have our own warehouse space. But we're not going to do it the way. We're not going to go out there and spend $1 million. Build a brick house. It'll be something a little bit different, but that's a good question for 6 months from now if we make that happen.
Yeah, the follow-up. Make that happen.
Right now, it looks like what we want to do can be done, and so now it's just a question of making it happen. But it's no big mystery. It'll be a warehouse space in Kentucky that we'll be able to keep our product on our own, and that's.
Simple.
That's what we're doing. It's that simple. You got a barrel. You got to put it in a building, and you got to put it someplace on land. It's got to sit there for a long time.
Yeah.
So we're working on that.
Yeah, that's a problem that's probably not going to disappear. All right. So last question as we sort of wrap this up is: do you feel that you may have started a revolution of brands that have started following suit? Because we had mentioned at the beginning of the podcast when we were talking about, just sourcing, people that say they take a bunch of MGPI and they put it together in they blend it and then they put it out and it's $100 in a pretty glass, and we don't know the history and the background as much as we do now, but you guys were doing this years ago. So do you think that you've kind of started an idea of just source it wherever we can, create barrels, put it out there, cash strength? Because it seems that when we look at things in the market that are coming from Mic Drop, OKI, like you can go on and name all the MGP or source barrels that are going either single barrels or it's blended in small batch. However, they're kind of newcomers to this market, right? Do you feel that you kind of started carving that path for other people to start venturing that way too?
That's a good question. Well, probably. And as I said earlier, it's a big market. We're confident in the product we put in the bottle, and it's all about establishing awareness and a following, and we've done that. I mean, this is all we do. This is our full-time thing. This is not part-time. We're not doing something else.
It's actually 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah, it's at least 2 full-time jobs. But they're both in the same business.
That's true. That's good.
So our focus is total and complete, and it's a big market, and there's plenty of room on the shelf. I think you are seeing a couple of things happen on the shelf. You're seeing a consolidation of some of the traditional brands. They're not selling any less, but it's just there's a little bit of consolidation. You're seeing, you're also seeing expansion of the shelf. So if it was 100 feet at one point, now it's 200 feet of real estate in a store or in a bar. So you're seeing that. There's room out there. But there's a point of, I think, as the customer, the end drinker, is more sophisticated. They know the difference between somebody that came up with a label and a pretty bottle and got whiskey from MGP, stuck it in the bottle and put it out there. There's a difference. And I think that our customer really has an appreciation for that difference. They know that. I mean, the conversations I've had are down to a level that is parsing the flavors that are just amazing. I love that dialogue. I love having that conversation. I find out new things every day about our products.
You have marzipan in your bourbon.
I'm sorry?
You have marzipan in your bourbon.
We have marzipan, yeah. That's right, yeah. Fred loves that. Fred loves that word. Marzipan.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's pretty good, though. It's a pretty good description of some of the flavors.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think that it is going to expand. It will continue to expand. And we're just trying to expand horizontally and vertically. And
just keep bringing good whiskey.
Yeah, right.
That's all we're doing.
And rum.
Well, awesome. So, guys, I think this will wrap it up. Before we kick it off or finish it off, if you have any way that people want to get in contact with you, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, anything like that, your website, go ahead and plug it now so people know how to reach you.
Okay. It's barrelbourbon.com, 2 R's, 2 L's.
Which we explained earlier.
Yeah, and pretty much barrel rye, barrel whiskey, barrel craft spirits, any of those get you to the same website. There's a contact form in there. You can reach us. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. It's at Barrell Bourbon. It's pretty straightforward. 2 R's, 2 L's.
Awesome.
And that's how you can get us. And we read our email and answer the mail and answer questions and answer the phone all the time. And
also to everybody that does enjoy these products, thank you. And continue to do so, because it does give us the opportunity to do what we love to do. Yeah. So big shout out to you guys.
Oh, that's a good one. Thank you for doing that, Troy.
Kiss up to the.
Thank you.
Thank the customers at the end of the day.
That's right.
So
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. So awesome, guys. I want to say thank you again. This has been very informative. We learned more about Barrell Bourbon than we ever could at our little 5-minute thing at Whiskey Live we ever did. Right. It was a good interview, but not near as in depth as this. And this was this was probably a year in the making that we've been talking of.
I know. I've been seeing my emails pop up, Joe and Kenny back and forth for like 2 years. I'm like, when is this going to happen?
I'm really glad we can do it.
Now we're at the point we're texting each other. Right? So again, fellas, thank you for coming on. Make sure you follow us as well. Bourbon Pursuit on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, if you like the show, support the show. Patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit, Patreon.com.
Thanks, guys, for coming on. That was a blast. One refreshing thing from interviewing you guys from others is that I can tell you all are like truly having fun, and like this is like your passion, and like this information you shared and like the projects you're sharing. I can tell you are truly having a blast, and so I'm looking forward to the future of Barrell Bourbon, and what you've done so far has been great. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Not trying to kiss your ass.
Yes, pick whichever bottle you
Checks
want.
in the mail.
Still waiting for those t-shirts.
But yeah, anyways, if any listeners have any show suggestions, feedback, comments, we love hearing from our fans. We love our fans as well. So please keep listening and just let us know what you want to hear, and we'll bring it to you. And we'll see you next time.